The Great Barrier Reef was once land, and the place tourists now cross by boat may hide one of the oldest human stories on Earth. Stay with this, because by the end, the coral will no longer look like scenery, it will look like a roof over a drowned homeland. Every year, visitors lean over glass-bottom boats, watching blue water flash with fish and pale coral. Cameras click, engines hum, salt dries on skin. From above, it feels like pure nature, bright and untouched. But around 20,000 years ago, the sea was about 120 meters lower. That means much of what is now reef floor was exposed ground. People could walk there, families could move across it, fires could burn there at night, with smoke rising into air where waves now roll. It is a map turning inside out. This famous reef is also a covered landscape, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander connection to this region reaches back at least 60,000 years. And one island inside that reef would later give scientists something they were told should not exist. If this kind of ancient Australian history matters to you, subscribe now, because the next discovery changes the whole timeline. To picture that older shoreline, you have to remove the water first. Take away the turquoise surface, the boat wakes, the floating snorkel masks. Lower the sea in your mind until the reef lagoon becomes plains, channels, ridges, and low hills. The air would have carried dust, plant smoke, wet mud near creeks, and the sharp smell of coastal salt still sitting far beyond the horizon. This was the edge of a continent during the Ice Age, a place where people knew where fresh water gathered, where stone could be found, where animals moved, and where paths crossed ground that is now hidden beneath tide and coral. The later sea level rise did not cover an empty stage, it covered country. And that matters, because archaeologists are not the only ones who have tried to read this vanished map. Along the Queensland coast, some of the strongest clues were carried in spoken memory, not as a vague tale about water, but as named places with changed shapes. One of those memories comes from the Yidinji world near Cairns, and it describes islands that should not look the way they do today. That Yidinji memory is so important because it gives shape to the missing coast. In one account from the Cairns area, Fitzroy Island was remembered as being joined to the mainland. Today, you reach it by water. The boat ride has the slap of small waves, the smell of diesel, and the sudden green wall of the island rising ahead. But in the older geography, that crossing was once a walk across connected land. Green Island is remembered differently again. The story says it was once 4 times its present size. That is a strange detail to invent. It is too specific, too tied to the way land shrinks when water claims the low edges first. Now place that beside the science. During lower sea levels, the coastline would have sat farther out, and islands near today's reef could have been larger, joined, or part of a wider shore. The oral record and the reconstructed landscape begin to touch. If spoken geography can hold the outline of a changed world for thousands of years, then the next question becomes harder to ignore. What else survived, waiting in the ground? That question led attention away from the open water and toward the islands that still rise above it. One of them is Jiigurru, also called Lizard Island. From the beach, it can look like a quiet place of white sand, warm rock, and scrub bending in the wind. But in the longer story of the reef, Jiigurru is a surviving high point, a piece of old country left above the water after the coast changed. In April 2024, a James Cook University team led by Professor Sean Ulm announced results from work there, carried out with Dingal and Ngurumungu traditional owners. That partnership matters. It was cultural ground, handled with permission, knowledge, and care. The researchers worked through an ancestral midden, the kind of place where meals, visits, tools, and daily life can leave traces. Shells crack under a trowel, soil changes color, small fragments appear where no tourist would ever think to look. At first, the evidence seemed familiar, and then the trench began giving up pieces of something Australia was not supposed to have. Those pieces were pottery. 82 fragments came out of the Jiigurru deposit, small broken edges, curved body pieces, and parts that once belonged to vessel rims. Imagine holding one in your palm. It would not shine like museum treasure. It would feel plain, rough, earthy, and that is exactly why it mattered. For a long time, the accepted story in Australian archaeology was simple. Aboriginal people did not make pottery before European contact. Stone tools, shell, bone, fibre. Wood, yes. Pottery, no. Then this island inside the Great Barrier Reef produced dated ceramic pieces from 1,815 to 2,950 years old. That made them the oldest securely dated pottery in Australia. The dates were not just a dramatic label. They came from controlled excavation, careful context, and the kind of patient work that turns a broken shard into evidence. Suddenly, the reef was no longer only hiding drowned land and remembered shorelines. It was also holding technology that did not fit the old timeline. But the most important test had not been answered yet. Did these pieces arrive by trade, or were they made right there on Jiigurru? That question turned the find from surprising into dangerous for the old story. If the pottery had been carried in from far away, it would still matter. It would show contact, travel, and exchange across water. But if the clay came from Jiigurru itself, then people there were making ceramic vessels with island materials inside the reef. The analysis pointed to local clay and temper gathered from the island. Think about that for a moment. Someone knew which earth would hold together. Someone mixed it, shaped it, dried it, and fired it. The broken pieces did not just speak of an object. They spoke of skill, choice, and knowledge held in the hands. And because the work was done with Dingal and Gurumungu traditional owners, the interpretation sits inside living connection to country, not outside it. The island was a place of return, use, and care. The sea around it had changed, but connection had not been cut. Now the reef looked different again. It was not only a submerged homeland under coral, it was a waterway crossed by people with purpose. And once that is clear, one older assumption begins to fall apart completely. The assumption was isolation. For many years, the reef was often imagined from the outside as a boundary. Mainland here, islands there, ocean in between. But the Jiigurru pottery makes that picture feel too small. The water was not just an obstacle. For people who knew winds, tides, reefs, and seasons, it could also be a road. You can hear that world if you slow it down. Paddles dipping, hulls knocking softly against beach stones, seabirds calling over shallow water, smoke from a cooking place drifting through coastal scrub. Movement across the reef was not random wandering. It required memory, timing, and confidence. To the north, Torres Strait Islander histories developed in a region shaped by contact between northern Australia, New Guinea, and wider Melanesian seafaring traditions. That does not erase the local story on Jiigurru. It makes it more powerful. Local clay, local making, and wider connection can sit in the same hand. So the reef begins to change again in front of us, from barrier to passage, from scenery to seafaring society. But then comes the deepest question of all. How long had that relationship already been alive? The question pulls the story far beyond the pottery. The ceramic pieces are nearly 3,000 years old at their oldest date, and that is already enough to shake a textbook. But Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander connection to the Great Barrier Reef region is documented back at least 60,000 years. Sit with that number. It reaches beyond the present reef, beyond the current shoreline, beyond the sea level rise that covered the old plains. Continuity does not mean every camp, tool, or practice stayed the same. The world changed around people. Coasts moved, islands formed, reefs grew, freshwater places vanished under salt water. New routes had to be learned by eye, hand, story, and boat. Still, the relationship held. The reef is a natural wonder. Its beauty sits over absence, memory, and responsibility. When bright fish move above coral heads, they are moving above a history of adaptation, loss, and custodianship that most visitors never hear, but here is the part that should make every archaeologist lean closer. Most of that older evidence may still be underwater. Underwater archaeology in a place like this is slow, careful, and difficult. The reef is alive. Coral grows over old surfaces, sand moves, currents blur edges. A diver can pass over a former creek bed and see only rippled light, silver fish, and coral shadows. Even with modern survey tools, finding human traces beneath the Great Barrier Reef means looking for quiet signs in a moving world. Researchers have to think like map makers and archaeologists at the same time. Where would fresh water have flowed when the sea was lower? Where would a dry ridge have offered shelter? Which former shorelines might have held camps, shell deposits, stone flakes, or another ancestral midden now sealed below water? Every search has to be done with cultural care. They are parts of country, tied to living people and living responsibilities. The Jiigurru pottery is so powerful, it is proof that the obvious places have not finished speaking. A small island trench changed the story once. Imagine what the drowned plains, channels, and old shorelines might reveal when the search finally moves below the coral. The ending of this story is a change in how the map is read. A reef chart can show channels, shoals, anchorages, and danger marks. Add the older coastline, and the same chart begins to hold another layer. Dry ground from 20,000 years ago. Yidinji, memories of islands before the water changed them. Jiigurru clay shaped into vessels, and at least 60,000 years of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander connection. The true force of the drowned Ice Age homeland beneath the Great Barrier Reef and 60,000 years of continuous occupation, it makes the famous view heavier, deeper, more human. The coral is still beautiful, the fish still flash blue and silver, but now, below that color, there is a shoreline the eye cannot reach. Science is only beginning to listen carefully enough. A trowel in an ancestral midden, a spoken place name, a diver's search line over pale sand. Each one touches the same covered page. At dusk, a boat crosses back toward the mainland. Behind it, the wake closes over the water, smooth again, as if nothing had been disturbed. If this story changed how you picture the reef, leave a comment below and subscribe for more ancient history hidden in places the world thinks it already knows.